Todd Schneider. Welcome to another episode of DMA Water Tech with Todd. In this episode, we're going to be going over the Powers thermostatic mixing valves. A couple things we're going to start off with is how to visually identify which valve you're using, where to find the exact model to get the correct parts for it, how to disassemble, how to put it back together, and how this thing actually works. So how do we visually indicate which valve series we're working with? And the easiest way to do that is by taking a look at this bonnet nut here. If it is a solid brass color, you'll be working with the MM430 series. You're going to find this installed in commercial applications where there is a building hot water return. If the bonnet nut is blue, you're going to be working with an LFSH1430 series. This is going to be more installed where there is no hot water return in that building. The last one you'll be looking at is if this bonnet nut is orange. If it's orange, that means it's an ETV 2, 3, or 400 series, and it'll be used more in emergency fixtures. Okay, now that we know what series we're working with, we really need to nail down what model number we're working with. Now you can do this in two different ways. You can either choose your incoming pipe size and your outgoing pipe size, or you can look at the top of this bonnet nut. On the top of this bonnet nut, you're going to see an exact model number inscribed into the brass itself. Now on this model, we're working with an LFMM433 series. Okay, now we know what series, what model number. Let's get down to how to take this thing apart. Now, one thing I'm going to tell you, the most important step that you can take in rebuilding this is making sure you shut off these two valves. These are going to be our check stops here. The way to do that is just take your Allen wrench, turn them to the right until it closes off all the way. Now again, if you miss this step, you will know it because you will be pretty wet. Now after you get these completely closed off, the next step you're going to do is run a downstream fixture, make sure that these stops are working for you. If everything's shut off, the first step I like to do is I remove this bonnet nut. Okay, once I get that bonnet nut removed, I'm actually going to turn my valve here, and I'm going to remove this cover cap. Now you want to remember there is a spring under here, so you'll have a little bit of tension coming out. So once I get my cover off, I have an O-ring, I'll have a spring, and we're going to have a plunger. Now the best way for me to tell you guys how to remove this plunger is I take a pair of needle nose pliers, and I don't just grab it and pull straight out, and I don't kind of back and forth it. What I want to do is grab it here and slightly bend it up, and bring it out. Okay, if you grab it and pull too hard on one side, you'll end up snapping these ears off. Okay, now that I've got this out, what I want to do is I'm going to turn it to the side, take a blunt screwdriver, and I'm going to push up and out. I'll have my overload assembly and my actuator. Okay, now there is an additional part inside here. This is going to be our funnel kit. Now most of the times you don't need to remove this assembly. It actually acts as a mixing chamber. Also it acts as a seat for that. So you can actually just rub your finger around there if it's in good shape. You don't always have to remove it, but for this video I'll go ahead and take it out. So with this funnel kit, it's going to come with this tool here. We'll slide it in. Take the same wrench, break it free. And we'll bring this funnel out. All right, now we have this completely disassembled. The next step you want to do is take a light sand cloth or a Scotch Brite pad, and I like to go inside here and clean this area out right here. This is where that motor is expanding and contracting, allowing that water to mix. So it's a good idea to lightly come in here, clean any sort of debris or calcium buildup. After I get that nice and clean, I flip over. I'm going to be coming down here to my overload assembly. I like to take a light brush right in this area and get it all cleaned out. Some of our key components that we're going to be looking into when we're rebuilding this thing, the brains of the operation is going to be this actuator. A lot of times what you're going to find is this is going to be completely covered in calcium. So this is one that you're going to need to replace. Another one that I highly suggest is going to be your plunger. This is what's actually moving up and down. So make sure that this O-ring gets replaced or the motor itself is replaced. Now to get this thing back together, we're going to take our funnel kit, insert our tool here. Now remember, when you're putting this back together, this is plastic threads going to brass threads. So very lightly thread it in until you find that thread pattern. Grab your socket. Now this is sealed with an O-ring seal, so you don't need to bury it down. Next step is to insert our plunger. Install our spring, our cover. Now again, there's an O-ring seal here, so you don't have to bury that wrench down. Last step is going to be take our actuator. What I do is I grab a small needle nose pliers and I actually set it right down inside our plunger guide and take our overload assembly. Now when I put this in, as I push it down, I like to kind of give it a little turn so the O-ring doesn't get snagged. Once that's completed, put our bonnet nut back on. Hand tighten with a quarter turn. Okay, now if we're having some issues with our check stops not shutting off completely, first thing you're going to do, shut off the upstream valves and then run a downstream fixture. Make sure we don't have any water going through. I'm going to fully open up our check stops, then remove our cover. Now what we're going to do is we're going to pull our spring out. This is going to be acting as our check and our valve plunger itself. And last will be our screen. Now this screen is very important. It's going to keep all that incoming debris stayed in this area, keep it out of this valve itself. To put it back, we'll drop our screen back in. Take our check spring, line it back up in there. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to actually close this valve, and you'll feel it thread in. Once I get it halfway, I'm going to spin my cover. And close my cover completely. Now one thing you're going to notice that this was all in an O-ring, so you don't have to have large wrenches to really hammer this thing down. You're not going to need any sort of Teflon tape or any dope. Okay, now we've gone over how to figure out our series, our model number, how to take it apart, how to put it back together. Let's talk about how this actually works. What we have is we have hot water entering on this side, cold on this side. As the waters blend together, we have an actuator here in the middle. As the water gets hot, the actuator is going to expand. When it expands, it's pushing the plunger down, decreasing the flow of hot water. The colder the water, it's going to contract, lifting it up, shutting off the cold water. As we're expanding and contracting back and forth, we're blending that hot water and cool water to give us the perfect temper water out of the top of the valve. All right, everybody, thanks for watching. Hopefully this video has helped you out on how to disassemble, how to put it back together, and actually how this thing works. If you have any questions, please put it in the comment below. And if you could, please subscribe and like the video.